Welcome to the debate. Today we're digging into Dr. Taylor's really influential work, the four-part brain model. It reframes consciousness in quite a radical way. She gives us this structural analysis, dividing the mind essentially into four functional quadrants. You've got left thinking, left emotional, and right thinking. In its model, it isn't just descriptive, right? It's positioned as an operational manual designed to guide us toward emotional wholeness. It really shows how our ego-driven identity, that's the left thinking part, differs fundamentally from our sense of peace and presence, which she locates in the right thinking quadrant. So the core tension that seems to arise from this material is pretty profound. Does Dr. Taylor's framework fundamentally argue that achieving mental health is primarily a function of, let's say, conscious choice and intentional direction? Something empowered by the knowledge she provides? Our poeto is, to the biological realities she describes, the fixed anatomy of trauma storage, the physical recovery from her stroke, the inherent fragility of brain tissue, do these suggest that deep biological constraints heavily limit the power of our conscious will?
My position today is that this neurobiological awareness, as detailed in the source material, fundamentally empowers conscious choice. It offers us the agency we need to direct our emotional state. And I'll be taking the somewhat opposite view. While I certainly agree that awareness is valuable, maybe even essential, I'm going to argue that the physical evidence Taylor herself presents, things like the fixed architecture of the brain, these embedded neurological records of trauma, and importantly, the involuntary transformative effects of physical damage like her stroke, all this suggests that conscious choice is actually highly, perhaps overwhelmingly constrained by the biological hardware itself.
Okay, so my argument really centers on the model's stated outcome, which is agency. The explicit promise, I think, is pretty clear in the work. When you understand your brain, you can manifest your own mental health. Now, this isn't just, therapy talk. This is presented as neurobiological self-governance. We're essentially given a map of our own circuitry so we can become informed directors of our experience rather than just passive recipients of automatic, chemically driven reactions. Mental health, according to this framework, is achieved by actively directing the fluid switching between these four quadrants, doing it intentionally. We learn to choose which character, as she calls them, is appropriate for any given moment. This conscious activation is the mechanism for integration. It allows us to purposefully balance the left brain's logic with the right brain's compassion. And this, in turn, enables us to manage those automatic emotional triggers and access those profound flow states she describes in the right thinking hemisphere. The whole process of integration is, I'd argue, framed primarily as an act of conscious effort, not just, luck or brain chemistry.
Right. I absolutely see that awareness is presented as a prerequisite for change, yeah. But I think focusing so much on manifesting choice tends to downplay the sheer structural impedance that Dr. Taylor also meticulously describes. So my core claim is really that the fixed geology of the brain dictates the terrain, and no amount of awareness can easily shift that bedrock. Let's look specifically at the evidence regarding the left emotional hemisphere. It's not presented as just a transient emotional state. It's identified as the dedicated location that stores things like emotional pain, trauma, cravings, even addiction. Now, when the text uses the word storage in this specific anatomical context, that implies, to me at least, a physical fixed structural impediment, a deeply carved neurological record. We're not just dealing with fleeting feelings here. We're dealing with potentially hardwired circuitry built around past suffering. So if deep-seated trauma and addiction reside in what seems to be a biologically rigid location, how potent can simple conscious direction really be against such established, powerful pathways? And furthermore, perhaps the most compelling piece of physical evidence in the text is Dr. Taylor's own experience suffering that severe stroke. The 8 years of profound peace and freedom from the ego's chatter that followed, that wasn't a choice she made. It was the direct result of her physical, biological architecture being radically altered. The removal, effectively, of the left-thinking hemisphere's dominance dictated her state of consciousness. This seems to confirm that biological structure can completely override conscious intent. And her process of rebuilding those lost functions, That was a complex, lengthy biological process, again, reinforcing the idea that structure dictates function.
Okay, I see the power in viewing that left emotional storage as a constraint, definitely. But I think that interpretation maybe minimizes the revolutionary power of the choice mechanism that Taylor proposes. Look, if the L-emotional side were a complete, insurmountable biological barrier, well, the only possible solution would be surgical or chemical elimination of that reactivity, wouldn't it? But she explicitly argues against suppression. Her goal, she states, is to be a whole human with a whole brain. The L-emotional hemisphere is part of that wholeness. It stores past suffering that needs to be acknowledged, not erased. The critical volitional step she champions is self-soothing. Now, this is described as a conscious act of rerouting, actively calling upon the brain's nurturing regions, the right emotional side, which she characterizes as inherently rooted in empathy and connection, precisely when that L-emotional trigger fires. So the true power of conscious choice here isn't eliminating the trigger itself, but gaining those maybe just 2 critical seconds required to redirect the energy stream from a knee-jerk reaction to a considered response. Yes, the architecture defines the available circuits, but awareness, she argues, grants us the control panel to choose the pathway.
Well, that sounds beautifully simple on paper, I grant you. But I really question the feasibility of that volitional action precisely because of the biological constraints established elsewhere in the text. The architecture fundamentally distinguishes the L-emotional side, which holds this past-based suffering, from the R-emotional side, which is described as rooted only in the present moment. That temporal distinction alone implies entirely distinct and likely very robust circuitry. Now, if trauma is genuinely stored there, a neurological record that can hijack the entire system with automatic, maybe panic-inducing fear responses, you're asking someone to execute a highly complex cross-hemisphere routing task while they are actively being flooded by deep-seated physiological alarms.
The biological imperative to flee or freeze, which seems to be stored in that dedicated anatomical space, often makes the conscious choice to switch to nurturing incredibly difficult, perhaps momentary, and certainly immensely arduous. The intense persistence of this physical wiring seems to undermine the concept that one can simply choose which character to embody easily, especially when faced with genuine trauma activation.
But look, if the effort is arduous, that doesn't negate the existence of agency, does it? It merely defines the challenge. We're told the L-emotional side is like a small, frightened child, and you can't reason with that child using left-thinking logic. You have to use right emotional nurturing. The biological map tells us where to direct that nurturing attention. The volitional effort, the choice, is the active generation of that right emotional energy to soothe the fear circuit. So the architecture provides the biological constraint, yes, but awareness provides the exact, targeted leverage needed to overcome it. That makes it an act of conscious effort, not just passive acceptance.
Let's go back to the stroke again, because I think it forces us to confront the deepest philosophical stakes of this debate, which lean towards biological determination. Those 8 years of profound peace, the oneness she experienced, that was a direct involuntary consequence of physical structural loss. Her state of being was entirely determined by what was physically missing. That seems to confirm that the deepest sense of self, the core state of consciousness, is dictated by the physical integrity of the hardware, overriding any volitional decision previously held. The left-thinking hemisphere, the seat of ego, calculation, identity, it had to be taken offline physically to grant that freedom. If the deepest state of peace requires that kind of biological alteration, well, that looks like the clearest evidence possible for biological determination.
I agree. The 8 years of involuntary peace is incredibly powerful data, yes. But I think that peace was granted not just by the physical removal of a quadrant's function, but perhaps by the memory it created for Dr. Taylor. You focus only on the cause of the peace, the physical damage. But I want to focus on the lesson derived from it and the subsequent, very volitional recovery. Yes, the stroke was involuntary, of course, but her recovery, her painstaking effort to rebuild and integrate her left brain functions, that was a deeply volitional process.
That recovery, coupled with the profound memory of pure right brain presence, provided the unique perspective necessary for her to choose integration later. Her stroke, in a way, showed the entire world the potential of the right brain, the peace, the presence, the spiritual flow she describes.
Now, armed with that neurobiological awareness she shares, non-stroke victims can potentially access and direct that state intentionally without having to incur physical damage. So the biological accident provided the map, maybe, but the conscious direction is the steering wheel that applies the lesson.
But even when she draws that map, Dr. Taylor dedicates significant focus to the physical structure itself, which seems to reinforce the limits of that steering wheel you mentioned. In the material, she walks us through the meticulous anatomy, the meninges, the dura mater, arachnoid, pia mater. She describes the brain as this delicate specimen preserved in alcohol, repeatedly emphasizing the sheer fragility of our biological hardware. This reverence for the physical organ strongly suggests that our fundamental capabilities, our emotional state, are entirely dictated by the physical integrity of this central nervous system highway. If damage occurs, whether it's acute trauma like a stroke, or perhaps chronic, unmanaged trauma that physically alters connections over time, then conscious direction seems fundamentally constrained. It implies we have an immense biological responsibility to protect the hardware precisely because choice is contingent upon that hardware's health. And that protection is structural and biological, not merely an act of will.
That detailed anatomy is crucial, I agree, but I believe we risk conflating the need for biological protection with an inability to consciously direct. The detailed anatomical description, I think, is used not just to warn of fragility, but primarily to ground the argument that this four-part framework is a real mechanism, not just some psychological metaphor. Understanding the biological hardware is presented as the indispensable prerequisite for effective conscious direction. The brain is called a masterpiece.
Right, if you understand the internal architecture, where the logic resides, where the empathy resides, and critically, where the past suffering is stored, you know exactly where to apply conscious direction to achieve wholeness. This awareness is also framed as critical in relationships.
She describes that when two individuals interact, you're dealing not just with two people, but with potentially 8 personalities, the 4 quadrants of each person interacting dynamically. Managing those 8 personalities and the complexity they create is presented as impossible without the awareness that allows you to consciously choose, for instance, to engage your right emotional, empathy, side to balance their left emotional, fear. The hardware might dictate the rules of the game, but our awareness dictates the strategy for how we play.
That's a well-articulated distinction, yes. Yet it still brings me back to the primacy of the structure as a boundary condition. If understanding the architecture is merely the prerequisite, then the architecture still remains the limit. If the L-emotional hemisphere contains, as the text strongly suggests, hardwired fear responses established through trauma, then awareness might only reveal the cage. It doesn't necessarily grant the immediate or easy freedom to just choose to be in the right emotional quadrant instead. The biological storage is a constraint that makes the choice arduous, often fleeting, which is precisely why so many people struggle, despite understanding the mechanisms intellectually.
I still maintain that the very struggle you describe is the definition of the choice in action. The difficulty doesn't invalidate the agency, it highlights it. The framework empowers individuals, I believe, by offering a neurobiological roadmap to choose regulation. Awareness provides the tool to intentionally direct brain function, allowing us to actively balance the societal overvaluation of the left-thinking portion with the peace and connection available on the right side. Mental health in this model is framed as an active practice of conscious, directed effort.
And I still believe that while this active practice is undoubtedly essential, the material itself provides too much compelling counter-evidence, the described rigidity of trauma storage, the transformative effects of actual structural damage, the repeated emphasis on biological fragility, to simply conclude that the process of manifesting mental health is purely a conscious choice. It seems fundamentally framed as a struggle against the existing biological architecture, one that requires extraordinary, sustained effort, precisely because of the inherent constraints of the hardware.
Well, the complexity of the brain,
as demonstrated by both the detailed anatomy and the functional split she presents, certainly forces us to appreciate that mental health isn't some monolithic outcome. It's perhaps better viewed as a dynamic, lifelong conversation between our, yes, fixed biological hardware and our evolving capacity for directed self-management.
Indeed. I think we must always appreciate that delicate interplay between our physical biology, that protected yet incredibly fragile masterpiece, and our profound capacity for awareness and self-direction. It's clear that the path to wholeness involves both protecting the biology and exercising choice. And there is certainly far more to explore in how exactly these components interact. Thank you for this discussion.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty mind-bending, actually. A concept that might just change how you see yourself, your own mind, your reality.
It's quite a claim, isn't it?
It really is. We're diving deep into the work of Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, the neuroanatomist. And her big, kind of startling idea is this. You don't just have a left brain and a right brain.
No. She says you've got four distinct characters living inside your skull.
Exactly, 4 characters. And the twist is the reason many of us feel, anxious or rigid or just disconnected, it's because society, maybe even you yourself, are basically forcing you to ignore 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. And that's what makes her thesis so powerful and honestly so practical. It takes these internal struggles, these mental health challenges, and instead of them being vague, it maps them onto our actual neurobiology. It makes it visible.
So it's not just abstract psychology, it's anatomy.
Precisely. Dr. Taylor's work is built on this foundation. The human brain has 4 anatomically distinct parts. You've got 2 specialized quadrants in the left hemisphere and 2 in the right.
Okay.
And the whole point of this deep dive, really, is to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding this internal map. Because knowing that geography, that granular awareness, that's what lets you actually manifest your own mental health. You get to direct it.
Manifesting mental health, that's a really potent idea. And it comes from this imbalance she talks about, right? Something deeply rooted in modern life.
Absolutely. It's like we're living life only using a quarter of our potential, or maybe better said, we're overusing one part and neglecting the rest. Our world today, it just overwhelmingly values and rewards one specific quadrant.
Which one?
The left brain thinking portion.
The logic center.
Exactly, the hyper-focused operator. It loves logic, step-by-step processing, rules, control, metrics, productivity, all that stuff. And it's very focused on the individual identity, the me.
The part that gets things done pays the bills.
Right. And look, we need that part. It's essential for navigating our complex society. But the problem, according to her research, is this intense over-reliance on it. She calls it the regulator.
The regulator.
And making the regulator the CEO of everything.
Oh.
That's where so much our emotional distress comes from, that feeling of disconnection. We're actively shutting down our natural ability for joy, for empathy, for that big picture spiritual awareness.
Because we're so focused on the rules and the me.
We've essentially made the regulator the boss of our entire consciousness.
So it's like we have this amazing 4-part operating system in our heads, this incredible software, but we're just running one program, a really structured, maybe kind of anxious program.
And it's making us miserable, almost by design.
Wow. Okay, so before we get into the specifics of these 4 characters and their functions, you mentioned grounding this discussion. We need to talk about the brain itself, the physical thing.
Yes, exactly. We have to respect the machine first. It's crucial because, often in these conversations, the brain just becomes a metaphor, right? We talk about mind and consciousness abstractly.
Sure.
But what's so compelling about Dr. Taylor's approach, especially when she teaches, is that she often starts by showing people a real preserved human brain and spinal cord.
Whoa, really? A real brain?
A real brain. Her point is to immediately ground the conversation. Just say, look, everything we're talking about, your thoughts, your feelings, your very identity, it happens here. In this incredibly complex, surprisingly fragile, and frankly, beautiful biological masterpiece.
That is humbling. Just thinking about it, we talk about ego and self and all these big ideas, but it's all running on this delicate piece of biological hardware.
Absolutely. And that hardware, processing just an insane amount of data every single second, needs serious protection to even work.
Right. It's not just floating around in there.
Not at all. And the source material goes into the amazing protective layers, this multi-layered defense system built right in.
Yeah.
We should probably touch on those, the meninges.
The meninges. Okay, yeah, let's unpack those. Because the engineering involved sounds pretty incredible.
It really is.
Yeah.
So you start with the outermost layer, the dura mater.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like a tough, leathery shield
Yeah.
or a heavy-duty strap.
Okay, strong stuff.
Very strong. It's fibrous, durable, and its main job is structural integrity. It literally anchors or straps the brain to the inside of the skull, prevents it from swashing around too much, basically. It's the first line of rigid defense.
So the dura holds it in place. Then what's next? Moving inward.
Moving inward, the function kind of shifts. You get to the arachnoid layer. It's much thinner, more delicate, almost like a spider web, hence the name.
Arachnoid, like arachnid.
Exactly. And this layer is where the critical blood vessels run, the ones carrying oxygen and nutrients to the brain tissue itself. But its other vital function, and maybe the more important one for protection, is the space it creates. Yes, the space between the arachnoid layer and the very innermost layer, which is called the pia mater. This space is the subarachnoid space.
Subarachnoid space, and that's not empty, is it?
Definitely not empty. This is where the real hero of brain protection lives. The cerebrospinal fluid, CSF.
Ah, CSF. I've heard of that. That's the shock absorber.
It's the primary shock absorber, yes. Think of it like a buoyancy tank. The CSF bathes the entire brain and spinal cord, making the brain essentially float.
So it reduces its effective weight?
Dramatically. Without CSF, the brain's own weight would actually crush the nerve tissue at its base against the skull. The CSF provides this hydraulic cushioning, protecting it from sudden movements, minor bumps, that kind of thing. It absorbs the shock.
It's incredible. The dura straps it down, the arachnoid carries the plumbing and creates the space, and the CSF provides the cushioning.
A pretty elegant design. And it ties back to Dr. Taylor showing the actual specimen. When she mentions it's preserved in alcohol, it just hits home, doesn't it? This unbelievably complex organ, the seat of everything we are, is also incredibly fragile. We have a huge responsibility to protect this hardware.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the spinal cord, too. It's not just the brain in isolation.
Right. The physical demonstration always includes the spinal cord because it highlights that deep connection. She calls it the central nervous system highway.
The highway, connecting thought and action.
Exactly. It's a two-way street. Sensory information travels up the highway to the brain for processing, and then the brain's decisions, its cognitive or emotional impulses, travel down the highway to make things happen in the body, to create action in the world.
It makes you pause, really. Thinking about the sheer complexity of the machine that's translating our reality, our intentions, every single moment.
It is astonishing. And this machine, this biological hardware, is also capable of incredible adaptation neuroplasticity, the ability to rewire itself even after damage.
Which is fundamental to her whole model, right? The idea that we can change and recover.
Absolutely. That resilience is key. So, okay, we've established the physical reality, this magnificent, fragile structure. Now we can sort of move up a level into the software, the cognitive and emotional functions happening within that structure.
Okay, let's do it. From the hardware to the operating system, mapping these 4 quadrants of consciousness, this feels like the core of it all, understanding how we perceive, who we think we are, and how we find peace.
That's the goal. And remember, the key takeaway up front is integration, not suppression. We need all 4 parts. Wholeness comes from using them all, consciously.
Not shutting any of them down.
Exactly. Think of them as 4 essential roles needed for a full life. You need to know which role is appropriate when. So let's start with the one society loves most, the one that's often working overtime. The left-thinking hemisphere. The regulator.
The regulator, okay, the internal manager. Beyond just logic, what's its job description?
Its function is very linear, sequential, analytical. It's the part doing complex math problems, organizing things into neat categories, understanding grammar and language structure. It loves details, metrics.
It sounds like my Monday morning brain.
Pretty much. It lives in the world of cause and effect. A leads to B, leads to C. It craves order, organization, rules. Because rules create predictability, right? Structure in a chaotic world.
And you mentioned identity earlier. It's big on defining me.
That is its absolute core function when it comes to identity. It draws the boundaries, sharp, clear lines between me and not me. It creates your sense of being a separate individual.
So it's the seat of the ego, the part that knows my name, my job, my history.
Precisely. It's that inner narrator, the voice in your head that's constantly talking, defining you, reinforcing your individual story. And look, when it's active, we feel productive. We feel in control. That's its domain.
But there's always a but, isn't there? What's the downside of living there too much? The cost.
The cost is huge. It basically puts you in a cognitive straitjacket. If you rely only on the regulator, you become incredibly rigid.
Because everything has to fit the rules.
Exactly. Life throws curveballs, ambiguity. If you need strict linear causality for everything, you can't cope well with uncertainty. You get anxious. And because it's so focused on the individual me separating you from everything else,
You feel isolated.
profoundly isolated. It cuts you off from that sense of connection, the feeling of being part of a larger whole. It's efficient for certain tasks, no doubt, but deeply isolating if it's the only voice you listen to.
Okay, so that's the regulator. Structure, rules, logic, identity, but also rigidity and isolation. Now, right next door, still in the left hemisphere, you said there's another quadrant, the emotional one.
Yes, the left emotional hemisphere. And
Yeah.
this is the one our culture seems to spend a lot of energy trying to ignore or medicate or just numb out.
Why? What does it do?
Metaphorically, we can call it the vault of suffering.
The vault of suffering? Wow, okay. That sounds heavy.
It is. It's essentially a repository. Its main job is to store emotional pain, memories of trauma, difficult experiences, the emotional charge behind cravings, the roots of addictive patterns. It all lives here.
So this is where fear resides. Guilt, shame, all that past-based stuff.
That's its territory. It holds on to the suffering that is directly linked to the identity created by the regulator next door.
Wait, say more about that link. How do the regulator, thinking left, and the vault, emotional left, work together, or maybe against each other?
It creates this potentially destructive loop. The regulator is trying to make sense of the world using structure and rules, right? Define the me.
Okay.
But the primary emotional data it has easy access to, right there in the same hemisphere, is the historical pain stored in the vault. Pain related to when rules were broken, when structure failed, when that me identity felt threatened or wounded.
So we're constantly trying to build a logical future based on painful memories.
Often, yes. We're referencing historical data that hurts to inform our present actions and future plans. And because our society puts such a huge emphasis on individual identity, on achievements, on sticking to the plan, it just pours fuel on this left brain fire.
It keeps us stuck in that loop. Structured anxiety, constantly revisiting the pain in the vault.
Exactly. That's why people feel trapped. They're using the part of the brain designed for rules and past pain, the left hemisphere, to try and solve problems that actually need presence, connection, or a totally different kind of thinking.
You can't think your way out of emotional pain using the same system that stores it.
You've got it. It's like trying to fix a system using only the tools that are part of the problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Okay, this is making sense, but it's also sounding a bit grim if we only look at the left side. We need some relief. Where's the agency? The counterbalance must be in the right hemisphere.
Absolutely. If the left is about separation, rules, ego, past pain, the right offers the way out. Let's look at the third character, the right emotional hemisphere.
Okay, right emotional. What's its specialty?
Connection. Pure, simple connection. We can call it the present connector.
The present connector. I like that.
Unlike its analytical neighbor on the left, this quadrant isn't interested in the past or future. It's focused entirely on the now, the immediate sensory experience. Its function is empathy, soaking up the present moment, feeling deeply connected to others, to nature, to the environment, without judgment.
Wow. So this is the direct antidote to the left brain's isolation.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
The left says me and looks back. The right emotional says we and embraces right now. This is where genuine well-being comes from. Spontaneous joy, real compassion, that feeling of awe, raw creativity.
It flows from here.
It doesn't analyze the feeling, it just is the feeling.
Precisely. It operates on the understanding that neurobiologically we're all connected. You and I talking right now, there's a connection happening via this part of our brains. It feels that unity.
Okay, that's beautiful, the present connector. And that leaves one more quadrant, the right thinking hemisphere. What does that one bring to the table?
This one brings the big picture, the expansive view. Expansive view, okay. How is thinking on the right different from thinking on the left?
It's completely different in style. Left thinking is linear, analytical, breaking things down into parts. Right thinking is holistic, intuitive, nonlinear. It doesn't follow steps, it sees patterns. It puts the pieces together.
Can you give an example? How does that pattern recognition work?
Okay, imagine looking at a complex spreadsheet. The left-thinking regulator checks the formulas, verifies the sums, analyzes the columns sequentially.
Right, the detail.
The right-thinking expansive view looks at the same spreadsheet and suddenly grasps an underlying market trend, or sees a new possibility, or understands the philosophical implication hidden in the data, without needing to process step by step. It sees the whole forest, the relationships, the context, not just the individual trees.
So it's like intuitive leaps, seeing the connections.
Exactly. This hemisphere is crucial for accessing higher states of being. You know, people talk about being in the zone or having a moment of flow or sudden intuitive insight or even profound spiritual awareness. That's the right-thinking brain online. It transcends the narrow me identity and connects with something larger or more universal.
Okay, let's map it out then. Left side, regulator, rules, logic, me, past, and vault, pain, trauma, past. Right side, present connector, empathy, connection, now, and expansive view. Patterns, intuition, big picture, now.
That's the basic map. And just holding that map in your mind changes things. Think about getting stuck in traffic.
Ugh, okay. Daily occurrence for many.
Right. So the regulator immediately kicks in. How late will I be? Whose fault is this? This is inefficient. Calculates lost time, feels annoyed about the broken rule of smooth traffic flow.
Check, I know that voice.
Then the bolt of suffering might whisper or shout.
This always happens to me. I had the worst luck. Remember that time I missed my flight because of traffic? This is just like that. Brings up all the past frustrations.
Double check, definitely know that one too.
But if you're aware of the map, you have other options. You can consciously choose to activate the present connector.
Ow, what does that look like? It might mean noticing the sunlight on the dashboard, feeling the warmth, maybe really listening to the music on the radio, taking a deep breath and releasing the tension in your shoulders. Just being in the car right now, without judgment.
Okay, shifting focus to the present sensory experience.
Exactly. Or you could call upon the expansive view.
The big picture thinker. What does that one say?
It might realize, wow, look at all these cars. I'm part of this huge, complex system of people trying to get somewhere. This traffic jam isn't a personal attack on me. It's just a temporary pattern in a much larger flow. It depersonalizes the frustration.
It takes the me out of the equation.
Precisely. And the key insight, the truly revolutionary part, is realizing you have the agency, the power, to choose which of those four characters gets the microphone in that moment. You don't have to default to the regulator in the vault.
That choice, that's everything. And this leads us to the really, really unique part of Dr. Taylor's story, doesn't it? Her understanding isn't just theoretical. It's not just from brain scans in a lab.
Not at all. Her deep, profound insights come from an experience that is almost unimaginable for most of us. She had a massive stroke, a severe hemorrhage in her left hemisphere.
And it wasn't temporary, was it?
No. It effectively wiped out the function of her entire left hemisphere, both the regulator and the vault of suffering, for 8 full years.
8 years without the left brain.
8 years. Think about that. She lost the ability to process information logically, sequentially. She lost language, understanding speech, reading, writing, even thinking in words. She lost her perception of linear time, and crucially, she lost all the baggage associated with her identity, her past, her ego, the voice of Bolte Taylor.
Can you even imagine the silent, that constant internal narrator, the regulator, just gone, switched off?
Hard to fathom. And what replaced it? What was life like living purely in the right brain, just the present connector and the expansive view?
What did she say it was like?
She describes it consistently as nirvana, la la land, a state of profound, pervasive peace, just overwhelming calm, a glorious feeling of being completely one with everything around her.
Oneness, because the left brain wasn't drawing those boundaries anymore.
Exactly. Without the regulator constantly defining me versus not me, she felt boundless, like pure energy merging with the energy of the universe. She couldn't tell where her own physical body ended and the space around her began. It was just this unified energy field.
So a constant state of flow. The pressure, the identity, the past pain, the future worries just evaporated.
Gone. Replaced by pure, unfiltered, present moment sensory experience and this deep feeling of connection to all things. It was, in a way, the ultimate proof of concept for the power of the right hemisphere.
She lived it.
She lived it. She couldn't do her job. She couldn't communicate easily. She couldn't manage daily tasks in the way she used to. But the trade-off was this direct, unmediated experience of pure consciousness, unbounded by ego. It was like her life became this living laboratory.
Observing the difference between the me self and the connected self.
Yes. And you mentioned time perception. That's fascinating, too. Yeah. The regulator gives us past, present, future. What happens when it's offline?
Does time just stop?
It kind of collapses.
Yeah.
Into the infinite present moment. Without the brain constantly sequencing events yesterday happened, tomorrow's coming, there was only now. This rich, expansive sensory now. She describes it not as having no time, but as experiencing timelessness.
Which perfectly aligns with the right emotional side being the present connector.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're truly fully present, the clock doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah.
And crucially, the pain from the past stored in the vault, it loses its grip because its anchor to yesterday is gone.
Wow. Okay, but there's another part to this journey, right? She didn't stay in that state forever. She chose to come back. She rebuilt her left brain.
Yes, and that recovery process was just as crucial for her insights. It was this painstaking 8-year effort to consciously, intentionally rebuild the neural pathways of her left hemisphere.
She had to choose to bring the regulator and the vault back online, knowing what it felt like to be without them.
Imagine that choice. It was an incredible demonstration of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to heal and adapt, but also of conscious will. And through that rebuilding process, she gained this incredibly unique first-hand understanding. Not theoretical, but lived. She knew exactly how each hemisphere, each quadrant, contributed to perception, to identity.
She knew what it felt like to be run by the left and what it felt like to be free in the right.
That dual perspective is everything. She knows intimately the experience of both states. So when she talks about choosing which character to embody, it's not just a nice idea. She knows it's possible because she lived the alternative and consciously chose to integrate both sides back together. Every time she uses language or logic or thinks about her past, she is consciously engaging those rebuilt left hemisphere functions.
That lived experience, the loss, and the deliberate recovery, that's what makes her model so practical, so believable, because she knows we can choose to shift away from that left-dominant state.
Precisely. Which brings us right to the actionable part, the power we all have for conscious choice and integration.
Right. This is where it gets really empowering. Dr. Taylor's core idea, boiled down, is just, it's so clear and revolutionary. Once you understand these 4 characters inside you, once you can recognize them,
You gain the ability to choose.
to actually choose which one you want to embody, which voice you want to lead in any given situation.
It flips the script, doesn't it? Instead of feeling like our brain is just reacting automatically like we're passengers.
We become the drivers.
Exactly. We become the directors of our own consciousness. Now, she's clear, this switching between quadrants, it happens automatically all the time anyway. Things in the environment trigger different parts.
Right, like hearing a loud noise might trigger the fear response in the left emotional vault.
Right. Or seeing a cute puppy might instantly activate the joyful connection of the right emotional present connector. That happens without conscious thought. But the key is moving from automatic switching, which is reactive, to conscious switching, which is transformative.
Let's dig into that with some more examples. You mentioned a business meeting earlier. The regulator is running the show. Logic, details, identity protection.
Yep. Necessary for the task. High focus. Me-oriented.
Okay, but then maybe someone challenges your data, it feels like an attack. What happens then automatically versus consciously?
Okay, automatically. Your left emotional vault probably flares up immediately. Defensiveness kicks in. How dare they? Remember last time they criticized me? Old wounds surface. Simultaneously, your regulator might double down, becoming even more rigid, more argumentative, trying to win and protect that fragile me. Isolation increases.
Okay, that sounds like a typical argument escalating. Now, the conscious choice.
If you're aware of your 4 characters, you can notice that flare up from the vault and the rigidity of the regulator, and you can pause. You can intentionally say, okay, vault, I hear you're scared. Regulator, I know you want to defend, but right now, I choose to activate my right emotional present connector.
And what does activating the present connector do in that moment? How does it change the dynamic?
Physiologically, it can help calm the stress response, slow the heart rate, deepen the breath. Cognitively, the focus shifts. Instead of, how does this threat affect me? Left brain focus. It becomes, what might be going on for them? What are they feeling that's causing them to react this way? Right brain empathy.
So you move from defense to curiosity, from isolation to connection.
Yes. You're engaging with the shared human experience in the present moment, rather than getting lost in your own historical pain, vault, or rigid defense regulator. That ability to consciously shift gears, that's the practice of creating inner harmony.
So it's not about pretending the criticism didn't happen, but about choosing a more resourceful response.
Exactly. It's about emotional regulation, but grounded in neuroanatomy. Instead of labeling yourself, I'm just an anxious person or have anger issues, you can reframe it. Okay, my regulator and my vault are really loud right now. Time to consciously bring my right hemisphere, my present connector, or my expansive view into the conversation.
That reframing feels huge. And this ties into how her model challenges our whole societal view of mental health, doesn't it?
It really does. Because the common approach, often, is that difficult emotions, especially the ones linked to the left, emotional vault, fear, anxiety, sadness, anger, are problems to be fixed, eliminated, suppressed, neutralized.
We're supposed to strive for what, being perfectly calm and logical all the time, like detached robots?
Kind of, yeah. We value the regulator's logic and control so much, we think the ideal state is to just shut down the messy emotional parts. But Dr. Taylor pushes back so hard against that. Remember, she lived without the left brain's anxieties and ego for years. She experienced the peace of the right brain.
And she still chose to rebuild the left.
Yes, and she has that fantastic quote, "Why would I want to be a robot? I want to be a whole human with a whole brain."
That says it all.
It emphasizes that all our emotions, even the painful ones in the vault, are part of being human. They're natural, they contain information. The goal isn't to erase them, the goal is integration, bringing all four parts into conscious harmony.
Okay, but let's clarify that integration piece, because it's crucial. If the vault holds trauma and pain, how is integrating it different from just forcing yourself to live with the pain? Isn't calling on the right side just another way to ignore or suppress the left side suffering?
That's the critical distinction.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally different. Suppression is usually the regulator left thinking, trying to exert control over the vault, less emotional. It's saying, stop feeling that, be logical, get over it. It's using rules and structure to push the emotion down, to lock it away.
Trying to control the feeling.
Yes. Integration, on the other hand, isn't about control. It's about connection and compassion. It's about consciously learning to self-soothe. It means when the vault is activated, when that old pain or fear surfaces,
Instead of the regulator shouting, "Shut up!"
you consciously bring in the right hemisphere, you call upon the present connector, right emotional, or the expansive view, right thinking, to essentially surround that activated vault pain with their qualities.
So what does that sound like internally? If the vault is replaying an old hurt, what does the right emotional connector say?
It doesn't argue with the memory. It offers presence and empathy. It might feel something like, wow, I really feel that old hurt right now. I acknowledge that pain. I have a compassion for the part of me that went through that. And I am here right now in this present moment, and I am safe.
It validates the feeling without getting lost in the story.
Exactly. It applies a soothing balm of neurochemical presence and connection to the raw emotional experience held in the vault. It doesn't try to logically dismantle the memory. It changes the emotional context around the memory.
And the right thinking expansive view, how might that contribute to soothing?
The expansive view could offer perspective. It might gently remind the system. This feeling is intense right now, but it's temporary. It's a pattern from the past activating. It doesn't define the totality of who I am now. I am larger than this feeling. It connects this specific pain to a broader context of resilience or universal experience.
So, true mental health in this model isn't about never feeling pain from the vault. It's about developing the conscious skill to meet that pain with the resources of the right hemisphere.
Precisely. You don't try to silence the vault. You learn to listen with compassion and perspective, using your present connector and expansive view. You integrate the difficult experiences into the larger tapestry of who you are, rather than letting them hijack the system.
That makes the vault less of a scary monster and more like an archive that sometimes needs compassionate attention.
That's a great way to put it. It holds data, sometimes painful data. But we have the capacity, through our right hemisphere, to process that data in a healing way. This gives us genuine agency. We're not just victims of our past emotions. We are the conductors of our own internal four-part orchestra.
Okay, this has profound implications not just for individuals, but for society, doesn't it? If we all started thinking this way.
Immense implications. It really urges us, as a collective, to rethink mental health entirely. We need to shift away from this model of fighting against disorder, labeling certain feelings or thoughts as inherently bad or wrong.
The way we often pathologize anxiety or depression.
Exactly. Instead of seeing anxiety purely as a malfunction to be eliminated, we could see it often as a signal, perhaps an overactive regulator clinging to control, maybe coupled with unprocessed pain in the vault, and definitely indicating a need to consciously activate the right hemisphere's resources.
So the solution isn't always just more control or another rule, left brain solutions, but maybe more connection, more presence, more big picture thinking, right brain solutions.
Yes, it calls for a practice of integration, not just suppression or medication, although those can be tools. It's about cultivating wholeness.
And what are the tangible benefits if we, as individuals, and maybe even as a society, started consciously practicing this kind of four-quadrant integration?
The benefits are immediate and widespread, I think. First, like we discussed, much better emotional trigger management. You understand where the reaction is coming from, vault regulator, and you know how to soothe it, present connector expansive view. Reactivity goes down, responsiveness goes up.
Less impulsive arguments, maybe. More thoughtful responses.
Definitely. Second, a natural increase in empathy and connection. When you're consciously practicing accessing your right emotional side for yourself, it becomes much easier to access it for others. You start genuinely feeling that interconnectedness. Conflict naturally decreases when empathy increases.
And that bridges into something often missing, especially in, say, leadership or public debate, that balance between logic and compassion.
Absolutely. You get the balance.
Right.
The left-thinking regulator provides essential structure, planning, analysis. We need that to function in the world. But it's tempered, it's informed by the right emotional side's compassion and the right thinking side's wisdom and holistic view. You make decisions that are both smart and humane.
It prevents the regulator from just running roughshod over everything with pure logic.
Right. And finally, this integration makes it easier to access those peak states. Flow, creativity, intuition, spiritual connection. Those moments where the ego steps aside, the regulator quiets down, and the right-thinking expansive view takes the lead, seeing connections and possibilities effortlessly.
Okay, so better emotional regulation, more empathy, balanced decision-making, access to flow states. Those are huge personal benefits. But you mentioned something earlier about relationships that sounded fascinating. Something about 8 personalities.
Ah, yes. This is one of the most mind-bending and practical implications. If you have 4 distinct characters within you.
Then any relationship between 2 people involves 8 characters.
Exactly. Every interaction, every conversation, every argument isn't just me versus you. It's potentially your 4 characters interacting with their 4 characters.
Yeah, that changes how you think about disagreements, doesn't it?
Completely.
Yeah.
Let's take that classic couples argument about money again.
Yeah.
It's not just person A wants to save, person B wants to spend.
No, it's way more complex.
Maybe person A's regulator is activated by fear of scarcity, demanding strict rules and budgets. Their vault might hold deep childhood memories of financial insecurity, adding intense emotional charge. That's 2 characters driving their side.
Okay.
Meanwhile, maybe person B's present connector just wants to enjoy life now, feeling stifled by the rules. And maybe their regulator feels criticized and controlled, pushing back defensively. That's another 2 characters. And we haven't even considered the other 2 characters in each person.
It's like a crowded room inside every conversation.
It can be. But the awareness changes everything. Instead of reacting to the surface behavior, why are you being so controlling? Or why are you being so reckless? You can pause and become curious.
Curious about which characters are active.
Yes. You can wonder, okay, which of their 4 characters is speaking right now? Is it their anxious regulator, their wounded vault, their joyful present connector? And, just as importantly, which of my 4 characters is reacting? And which character would be most helpful for me to consciously embody right now to bridge this gap?
So instead of just meeting their regulator with your own regulator, logic versus logic or defense versus defense,
You might consciously choose to bring your present connector online, to offer empathy first. Okay, I hear that you're feeling really anxious about our savings. Help me understand that fear. You meet their activated character with a complementary connecting one.
that feels like the definition of conscious communication, moving from reactivity to compassionate curiosity.
It really is. It shifts the whole dynamic from blame and defense to understanding and connection. It acknowledges the complexity within each person.
And it ties right back to what you said about the vault. The pain stored there isn't meant to stay locked away.
No, it's seeking integration. It's waiting to be met.
Met by the right hemisphere's capacities.
Exactly. By linking the vault's stored pain with the right emotional side's empathy and presence, and the right thinking side's perspective and peace. That's the neurological process of healing. Not just healing ourselves, but healing our relationships too.
This whole framework, it really feels like it hands the power back to the individual. We're not just stuck with the brain we have reacting on autopilot.
Not at all. We are the pilots. We have this incredible 4-part system, and understanding it gives us the controls, the peace, the joy, the connection we're all looking for. It's not out there somewhere, waiting for circumstances to be perfect.
It's an internal capacity we can choose to activate.
It's a conscious, moment-to-moment choice, rooted directly in our own neurobiology. We already possess the tools. The present connector, the expansive view right here, ready to be engaged, especially when the regulator and the vault are making a lot of noise.
Which brings us full circle, really, to the core message of Dr. Taylor's work, distilled from her incredible journey.
Yes, that central lesson, the one proven by her own lived experience, is so powerful in its simplicity. She says it clearly. When you understand your brain, you can manifest your own mental health.
Manifest it. Create it, not just cope with it.
Create it. Actively choose it. We started this by saying society often forces us into that anxious, isolated corner by overvaluing the left-thinking regulator and ignoring the others.
But knowing about all four, the regulator, the vault, the present connector, the expansive view gives us the map to find our way back to wholeness.
It shows us that happiness, peace, connection, they aren't just lucky accidents. They are skills we can cultivate by deliberately choosing which internal character to engage moment by moment.
We stop waiting for the outside world to change the perfect job, the ideal relationship, the endless vacation before we allow ourselves to feel good.
Because the capacity for feeling good, for joy, for peace, for connection, it's already built in. It resides right here in our right hemisphere, accessible through conscious choice right now.
So as you, the listener, take this framework out into your life, maybe this is the thought to carry with you, the thing to explore. If your experience of reality, how much joy you feel, how much peace, how much connection is truly a choice you make in each moment by deciding which of your four characters you engage.
Well, it's one small thing you could do today. Right now, even.
Yeah, what immediate, tiny shift could you make to consciously call upon one of those powerful, maybe underused right brain quadrants?
Maybe step back from the regulator's relentless demands for just a minute. Maybe offer some compassion to whatever the vault is holding today. Engage that present connector. What do you see, hear, feel right now? Or access that expansive view. What's the bigger picture here?
Claim your whole brain, your whole self.
That's the invitation.
That's it for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us.